Hello everybody, hope you're doing marvelously well. Not only are we going to do a mix breakdown here, we're also going to let you have the multi-tracks, so stick around. So this is very exciting. We've been mixing this song live, streaming. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to break the song down from top to bottom, showing you everything that I did. And also there is going to be a link flying around here where you can download these multi-tracks. So you can mix along with me. You can mix in a completely different way. You can have all kinds of fun with it. This song is called Stay. It's by David from the band The Workday Release. So this was a lot of fun to do. I got to play acoustic guitar, electric guitar, bass, produce it, engineer it with Eric Gonzalez sitting over there. This one was a free-for-all one. I didn't restrict myself to any one particular manufacturer's plugins. I used a bit of everything. So you may have some of these, you may not, but these techniques you can apply to any song and of course to this mix because you can download the multi-tracks. If you've been following any of the live streams, you'll notice that we used my Baldwin student model. I believe it's called a Hamilton. That was mic'd by an AEA microphone, just a mono ribbon microphone. And my drums are my 64 Ludwig, which is mic'd by mainly Lewitt microphones with a couple of 57s on the snare. The vocal was recorded with a Lewitt 440 Pure. And this was all recorded through the Audient ASP-800 linked with the ID14. It's a really nice combination. I also used occasionally, just for the heck of it, the UK Sound 1173. So in the real world, this is pretty inexpensive. Now, we are using a handful of fancy plugins here, but we've also mixed this record in the box, if you've been following on our streams, using stock plugins as well. So we've done all kinds of things. The fun thing with this is just to demonstrate, no matter what the gear, you can make something great sounding. So let's get stuck in. Let's listen to the mix. Here it is.
Landed here with the world 2 steps away, sizing up the line I've crossed 100 times, taking count of all the nights considered lost, holding tight to who we were before I knew of all the dirt. And stay with me, don't leave, I need you now. And when I do it's right, I know I'll make you proud. Instead of pacing back and forth and giving in when you want more. So it's a shame now that I can't follow. Stay and wait for me, stay and wait for me. I will call when I'm coming. Stay and wait for me, I'll find you here if the stars allow it. It's even worse when I'm close and deny it. I shouldn't ask when I know you want me now. You want me now.
Cool, so this is a really, really fun song. I had a blast playing on this. I'm just gonna sprint ahead for a second and play you the bridge, because it's an instrumental bridge and I got to have some fun with this.
for me, stay and wait for me.
Great. I'm actually going to put a little bit more effect there on the vocal. You'll notice I'm a bit of a, I wouldn't say tweaker because that sounds a little silly, but I do like to make sure that everything sounds great. And even when I'm listening at this stage, I'm going to tweak it a little bit. That's just the way I am. So I'm putting a little bit more delays in there. I did print some reverb effects, which you're going to get. You're going to get everything that you see here. Everything here. I've printed some reverbs. You're going to hear those. That's actually printed through some hardware, so that's kind of fun. So you're going to hear this.
Stay and wait for me, stay and wait for me. I will call when I'm coming. Stay and wait for me, I'll find you here.
Cool. You'll notice on these tracks here, if I zoom in a little bit, I did do some editing. We edited some of these S's downs a little bit, and it's really dependent on the amount of compression and EQ that's being applied. Like here, I'm actually going to change that slightly. This is the latest version of Pro Tools. I'm not sure what DAWs you'll be in, but essentially what I love about this is I can do clip gaining here, so I can turn this up if I want to get the end of that phrase, and then I can choose where I want to put my fade point, and it's pretty fantastic what it does here. So that little boost I just did there, that little gain bump there is really, really tasty for just adding some extra expression to the end of the vocal. Have a listen.
Here.
It's so much personality at the end of the word. All right, let's get stuck in. You've got an idea of the song now. Let's go from the top down. This is my Lewitt kit. If we listen to just the live drum elements alone, this is what we've got. So if you listen to the way it's soloed together there, I've made that live kick quite aggressive. If you see the miking on the live kick, there's no hole in my kick drum. So if I take off all of the EQ compression and the Oxford Envolution that I'm using, which is not only on the kick here, but also on the kick bus, this is what I get. Which is great if I just want Perfect. If I wanted to go for a super organic sound. However, I've done two sets of things. I've bussed kicks together. Let's put the samples that I used in together. This is what I've got. What's creating that? Well, obviously it's a combination of factors. On the live kick up here, I've got some really aggressive looking EQ here. Let's just swim around here. Look at that. Super aggressive. So what I've done is I've boosted 60 Hertz quite dramatically, like 4.2 dB. But I've also not been afraid to high pass because that kick is so boomy, I've got to control it. And then I've gone to my usual like 350 Hertz here and sucked it out and then added some 6K. So that's quite aggressive EQ. But I think one of the biggest things is the Oxford Envolution. So obviously you don't have to use the Envolution. You could use any kind of transient designer. SPL's Transient Designer, of course, is fantastic. And one of the biggest sounds, I think, of the late 90s and early 2000s. It seemed like every drum sound had that pap, 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 pap sound. Okay, after that, I used Brainworks' SSL, which is really kind of special. I really like this one a lot. I've high passed here, and this high passing helps shape that real massive low end that we've got going on in that live kick. Other than that, there's a bit of kick boost at about 2.5 here. Nothing above it there. A little bit of cut around about 350, and quite a lot of boost at around about 60 Hertz. There is also some compression. Not a huge amount, probably about 3 or 4 dB, you can see it here. It's a live kick, so occasionally being dynamic, it's hitting a little harder. Okay, so all of this with our 3 selections of Addictive Drum samples, which of course you can download. Those, by the way, are some of my sounds as well that I've created. one of them being the bootstrap one here, which is rather special. Those altogether go to a kick sub here. So again, some more EQ. This time a bit of 65 boost, a little 100 cut. Now that 100 cut is there because you get a build up with multiple kicks, usually around about 100, 110, sometimes as low as 80. And why do I cut that? Well, I cut it because that's going to kill the bass guitar, because the bass guitar loves that 80 to 100 area. So I cut it there. Also a little additional 350, bit more low mid cut. And again, the Oxford Envolution, this time very subtle, just an overall shaping of transient boost here and a bit of sustained cut. And then I've got the newest, latest version, the 25th anniversary version, I should say, of the Waves L1. I love Waves plugins. I love the combination of all of these things. All of these plugins are great favorites of mine. And then the combined sound of the kicks is being sent to a reverb. This reverb is just a good old-fashioned D-Verb. There it is, just bada boom, D-Verb. And it's a 750 milliseconds, so it's a short room tone. And there's an EQ rolling off the super lows and the highs. So it's just a mid-range. I don't need a lot of low build-up on the kick drum. And this is what we get all together. Just quite a lot of reverb. On its own in isolation, it seems like a lot. But bear in mind, once that gets put into the track, it will sound significantly less. Have a listen.
Stay and wait for me, stay and wait for me. I will call when I'm coming. Stay and wait.
If you were listening then, you could hear it on and off, and it's not making a huge difference.
Stay and wait for me, stay and wait for me. I will call when I'm coming.
So it's not like the kick drum suddenly got washed up with a ton of reverb. It just gave the drum some ambience. And also you'll notice here, I'm doing automation. I've got the kick coming down in the verse, down in the pre-chorus, up in the chorus. And the same with the reverbs. So as there's more instruments, the reverb gets to be more because it gets soaked up with all those extra instruments. Here's the drums at the beginning.
I landed here with the world 2 steps away.
I mean, it's not entirely dry, but you hear it sounds a lot drier. Okay, so next up is the snare top and bottom. And the way I did that is I used it mainly for like low end, because it's a very soft sounding snare. The way he had it tuned, have a listen. The way he's got it tuned is there's no crack on it. So that's where I use the samples. So the EQ on the snare top and bottom is basically boom and fizz, if you like. It's 130 big wide boost and a big wide 8K boost there. Then there's a gate to get rid of some of that bleed that we don't want. If I take the gate off, put it on, the secret I find to using gates is using the floor. What the floor does here is allow things to breathe. So basically, there's always something bleeding through. You hear a little bit in between the hits. The reason for doing that is so it just doesn't sound like it's going chat, 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 being chopped out and just placed there. I don't want it to sound like a drum machine. I could even bring the floor up a little bit more. And then, of course, there is the samples that I used along with it. And one of those samples there, as you can probably hear, is triggering the reverb. This is the reverb here. Again, a D-Verb, this time up to a second, a little bit longer. There's a lot of talk about making the reverbs to fit the tempo of the song. That can work, but bear in mind that the decay of the reverb is going to finish a lot shorter, audibly shorter than when the next hit happens. So for instance, if I decided that, to make it the length of this, that is 1.8 seconds. So let's just say I wanted that reverb to be 1.8 seconds, which I think is absolutely ridiculously long, but let's just say I did. Now, technically, the decay is the same length between hits, so that should work. First of all, it's obviously far too long for what I need, but even then, it disappears into the drum sounds much, much earlier than that. You know, once all the other ambience and all the other hits of the drums get in there, you barely hear it. So if I really wanted it to last the length of that, I'd probably have to go up to about 2.5 seconds. Let's have a listen now. Even that feels short. So these are things to remember. It's like, yeah, if you want a guide, a rough guide, I should say, on the sustain of the reverb, you could measure it out between hits and then make it, the decay match it. If that's really what you want to do. I think that's just a way of doing it. I don't know anybody that does that professionally. I think that's, sure, that can give you a rough balance. But remember that, first of all, the decay is going to be so quiet after a period of time that you're going to want to make it go longer if you really need it to go that long. But ultimately, we're using the reverb here on a shorter decay time, a short-ish decay time, to really make the snare just feel fatter and bigger. Have a listen. That's without the reverb. Put the reverb on. It just sort of, it gives a lot more ambience to the snare, yes, obviously, but it also makes the snare a bit more commanding. It sort of makes you think, yeah, that's a snare drum, you know. God bless it. Okay, next up is the toms. And what I did on this floor is EQ the low end, but bring out a ton of that mid-range, because those low mids can get really, really ugly. And then the high mid boost here is for the articulation of the stick hitting the toms. But for the floor in particular, a little bit of this RBass is really, really good. Without the RBass, have a listen. It's good. I mean, it still sounds good, but that really, really helps it. Now for the rack tom, very similar EQ, low end boost, usually typically around about 100, 350 massive cut, you know, just to get rid of a lot of ugly low mids, and then the high end boost stick articulation. There's a tom sub with both of these busts together. You can check out all of the other streaming videos below and see my whole process, but I just want to give you a really detailed view of it afterwards. Okay, so again, low mid cut, not so much low boost, but more low mid cut and a little bit more articulation. Then our old friend MV2. This is bringing up some of the low information and compressing over the tops. It's this low and high kind of squeezed together. I really love it. It's not a parallel, but it feels like a parallel in a box. It's really good. The tom itself has some EQ. The EQ itself is rolling off some low mids and rolling off some low end. So again, there's not a huge amount of low buildup on the reverb. And the reverb is just a good old-fashioned D-Verb, comes free with Pro Tools at 750 milliseconds. Okay, next up is the overheads. The overheads have low mid cut and a high pass. Not a lot else, if you have a listen. They're a pair of Lewitt overheads. I believe that they're the 340, the LCT 340s, and they're measured in phase with the snare. And that's the only EQ I apply to it. The hi-hat, absolutely no EQ at all. I'm not even sure if he plays it in the song. Yep, he doesn't get to it until the second chorus. Great. And then the room is just a vocal mic. It's just the LCT 440 Pure sitting in the room. And to be honest, I just used it for a bit of ambience. So I cut out some lows, some low mids, and then put a reverb plugin over it. It's not doing much. It's just in there in the background. I think what's really helped this drum sound is the bussing. I did two very distinct things. First of all, I created two sets of buses. One that has this rather glorious plugin here, which is a T-Rax vintage compressor. It's basically a 670. It's a stereo Fairchild. It's really nice. So we can listen to just that on its own. Here it is. You know, let's go to maybe one of the louder parts. You can see the VUs moving a little bit. What I've always loved about Fairchilds and Fairchild emulations is they control the high end really nicely. Even if you're not doing a huge amount, that's why we've always reached for them in the studio, is because they seem to really give you a silky smooth high end, like get rid of the brittleness. And then there's a little gentle EQ here with a bit more low mids, bit of highs, and a bit of lows boosted at about 60, and of course, a bit of high passing. So that's afterwards. And then our old friend L2. Just giving us about 1 to 3 dBs worth of gain reduction. It's just tucking in those transients a little bit more. So that creates a nice drum bus, and this is a nice drum sound. But there's something that I wanted to use with this, and that, of course, was a parallel. So let's have a listen to that. So it's basically the same settings. So the REQ and the L2 doing the same job, but with this crushed. I like it because it kind of gives me a almost an SSL sound. So those two together gives me a nice amount of energy. But, so those two I would consider like one sound, this parallel drum bus with a regular drum bus. But what I did as well is I felt like in the mix later on that the kick and the snare was getting a little too squashed together, a little too perfect, wasn't quite modern enough. One of the things I like about modern drum sounds is we now have this ability to have really great separated kick and snare as well as the kind of mushed together tape sound that we grew up with. And so I took the kick and the snare and gave them their own bus. So that's the live kick and snare with the samples all together, so kick and snare only on their own drum bus. Then I put it together with the other two and I get this. If I mute that kick and snare, have a listen. Now drop it in. It's pretty tasty. I love what it's doing. It's just adding just a little bit more of the direct sound of the kick and the snare blended together. And then all of those things would just bust together with one L2. Now, I talk about this a lot. There isn't one way to do this. This is just the way I did it this time. And it just seemed to work for this song. If you watch all of the videos that I've done with David's songs in the live streams, I've done different kind of drum sounds with each song. I also like the idea, really love the idea of every song having its own individual feel. Now, with the bass sounds, I had two different performances. I played the verses with my fingers. That's very obviously played with my fingers. But the chorus, I wanted to increase the kind of attitude, so I played it with a pick. Definitely playing harder, but also I added a SansAmp here. The SansAmp is wonderful. It is a quick, comes free with Pro Tools, easy way to add some attitude. I think it's one of the greatest plugins that they have. It's really fantastic. The big trick that I did, and I always do on both the fingerstyle one and the pick one, is this. I take the DI on both of these and I roll off all the mid-range and above. So here I went to 159 and just rolled it off. So here's the DI on the pick bass. Here's the DI on the fingers. As you can see, it's all just low end. Then I took the amp and did the reverse. So here's just the amp. The amp, that was the amp of the pick. Here's the amp of the fingers. So that's where all the personality lies. The low end clean DI gives me a lot of body and low end, but the personality lies with the amp. I went through the same bass sub for both. I've got a little 60 roll-off so it gets out of the way of the kick, but also because I'm about to go into an RBass, which is a wonderful tool, but if I left it flat going into there, not only would it boost 80, but it boosts down all the way down to like 20, 30, 40. So shaping it before you go into the RBass is really, really nice. That goes into the MV2, which is set very aggressively. Then a little EQ afterwards, again, a little bit more shaping on the 60, a little 5K-ish area, just for some high end. And then, because I was moving, and this is predominantly because I was moving between the two, I wanted to shape and consistently have the low end between the DI and the fingers. So I tried and very successfully found that the Gullfoss does a wonderful job. So let's have a little bit of a listen between the finger style and the pick. Have a listen. And the Gullfoss just controlled the low end. I found when I took a break from the song and came back to it, the only thing I was sort of facing was a build-up of low end on everything. The toms, the kick drum, the bass guitar, the electric guitars was all starting to get a little muddy down there. So really, really smart high passing, which is very, very important. High passing is extremely important, as you can see how much I'm doing here. Not aggressively all the time, but lots of small incremental amounts. It's really helping. And so I did some high passing, I cleaned it up, did a little bit of low cut, and I think we've really, really got to something which is quite clean now. Here's our acoustics. There's the Oxford Reverb, which is just glorious. We love this on the acoustics. All the acoustics are bussed together and EQ'd in one go, using, yes, you guessed it, the Brainworks. There's some boost here at 9K, and there's some boost at 6K. There's no compression on this whatsoever. All I did was use the MV2 afterwards. And that's with the Oxford Reverb. Really, really nice combination. So not a lot of stuff going on there. It's pretty much how I recorded it. The only other thing I think to point out was the fact that we're quite aggressive on a high passing here. I went all the way up to 182. So quite aggressive high passing, but I didn't need any other low rumble and all that stuff. If you hear what it's doing with the bass, here you go. Let's throw in the drums. So it's a nice, clearly defined low end, everything making space for each other. So I hope you're enjoying this. Don't forget to download these multitracks. This is something we do every single month in the Academy. We make multitracks like this available, and we do this. We break the song down, but we also have mix critiques where everybody gets involved and helps each other out. And I will listen to your mixes and critique it as well. So check out the Academy. Okay, so next up is the guitars. Basically, what I did is I did an episode using just Amplitube. And I found that I had more fun shaping most of the guitar sounds using just the DIs. So a lot of this is just the Amplitube itself. So you can take the DIs and have some fun with it. The JC120, the JazzAmp 120 here as they called it, is one of my favorite sounding amps. Have a listen to it. It's just got a little bit of modulation going on. Well, maybe a little bit more than a little bit. You throw that in with the acoustics, it's really nice. I love that. Then I took a bass amp here, have a listen. So that's a bass guitar with delay pedals on it. Throw that together. I was just trying to get something a little strange and not do something quite so regular. And then I just put in a bog standard kind of rock single note. And all of these you're going to get with the amp tones and with the DIs, and you can have fun and do all kinds of crazy things and do whatever you mess around with it to your heart's content. Okay, let's have a listen to all of those elements together. This is the chorus. Great. We did quickly and rather ruthlessly move past our verses here in my excitement. Now, I used Amplitube, and there was a whole video where I did this, and that link is going to be around about here, so you can go back and watch how I built all these guitar sounds up. The only thing I've done subsequently to that, by the way, is just add a little bit of low and high pass filter, just to shape it. And that's pretty typical for me. So let's check those out. Here's the very first guitar part that comes in. Now a second one comes in on a different Amplitube amp here, and I'm building the notes of the chord. Have a listen. And then a third part comes in. Let's have a look at that amp we're using. So that's the three parts here. Now you'll notice there was a little bit of build-up, so I actually did decide to use the Gullfoss just for the heck of it, and I'm just controlling, you know, 6K and above. I don't need anything to go on below that. And it's really more about the low mids. Have a listen. Look at this curve down here. Look at this area here. You'll see what it's doing with that, with those low mids and low end build-up. It's controlling it really nicely. Like that area there. Let's listen to it in bypass for a second. Quite drastic. Now put it on. Doing a great job. Have a listen to it in the track.
Leave, I need you now. And when I do, it's right.
What I like about those guitar sounds is you can hear those, it's like a little bit of bite to it. A little bit of bite. The only other things to talk about are, of course, the piano in the beginning, which is my Baldwin over there. It's a Hamilton student model. And we've got a little bit of MV2, which is just, you know, controlling the dynamic range a little bit. And then a tiny amount of boost here. I'll just put a little bit more high pass on, I suppose. Not that it really needs it. That's being mic'd by the AEA ribbon mic. Now, the piano that's in this is MIDI. So this is up to you guys to have MIDI. What we'll do is we'll print it for you, but we're going to give you the MIDI track as well. So you're going to have our piano MIDI. Now, this is a beautiful one. This one is Arturia. And this is, I think, one of my favorite ones I've ever used. It's an upright pop. Here's all the miking positions. It's just absolutely gorgeous. What is interesting is it's an American one, so it's probably a really nice Baldwin. This is such a fantastic piano plugin. Now, we've been asked a lot recently to do more stuff using virtual instruments, so stay tuned. We're going to do a lot more on this. But this is the beginning. I'm really, really impressed with this. This is a fantastic piano sound. Listen to this. I mean, it just sounds like a really well-recorded piano. If I recorded my piano that way, I'll be very happy. And we'll give you a bounce of that, but we'll also provide you with the MIDI for those of you who want to use your own piano sound or something else even. Okay, so the only other thing to talk about on the instrumentation, of course, is the bridge part. which is me paying homage, or as Americans would say, homage, to U2. Now I'm going to give you the DIs, but I'm also going to give you that you're hearing there, which is all of the amps, like noisy delays going on, all kinds of craziness. It's sloppy. I love it. Okay. Last but no means least is the vocal. Now, I did quite a lot of work to this vocal because I wanted to sort of experiment with some stuff. We did some de-essing, which you see here. I
landed here with the world 2 steps away.
Tiny bit that came in at about 5.5K. Then when I boosted the high end, of course, you know, that might get a bit more excessive. So there's another de-esser afterwards.
I landed here with the world 2 steps away.
You see you can do on the 2 steps there. Watch that one more time on the 2 steps away.
I landed here with the world 2 steps away.
So you got 2 to 3 dBs worth of cut there. Then another, getting rid of some of this little nosiness that he had, which is like 650, a little bit of 560, a little bit of 300, just kind of in this low mids. That's very, very typical, especially with a lot of modern singers, because I think since the advent of like emo, it's kind of everything's kind of got to this place where everybody's singing, where we grew up listening to rock singers who were like more throaty. Now I think with the emo style and more modern pop music, it tends to be a little bit more on the head voice. So I do find a lot of modern singers I'm pulling out 3, 450, 5, 6, 650, a lot. It's coming out a lot of vocals. But guys and girls that sing more from here, aren't quite so in this area here, are projecting a little bit more. I don't really have as much issue with that. But again, there's no right way or wrong way. And you learn to mix in all the different things. Some of these guys with great sort of like, you know, throaty voices, I have no mid-range, no pure mid, so I have to dial that back in. That's my point. It's like there's no criticism. Every voice is different. And then another de-esser after that EQ.
I landed here with the world 2 steps away.
Again, a little bit there. It's being tamed in stages. If I did it too massively in one go, it would sound super lispy. But, you know, I want it to be brighter. So there's a risk of brightening the whole vocal is going to increase the S's and the T's. Then our old favorite, the RVox.
I landed here with the world 2 steps away.
Probably getting 4 to 5 dBs worth of gain reduction. I love the RVox. It's a great compressor. Another de-esser. Now this one needs its own episode. This is a really, really good de-esser. This is Slate's. This is Stephen Slate's one. It's called the Iosis, or the Eosis. I believe it's Iosis, but hey, I could be wrong. It is really, really good. I've got the sensitivity set slightly above where it normally would be, where it defaults, and the smoothness a little bit. Everything else is set the same. Listen to it, it's gorgeous.
I landed here with the world 2 steps away. Sizing up the line I've crossed 100 times.
I love how it just identifies those areas. And then look over here, this graphic, you can see what it's doing. It's absolutely gorgeous.
I landed here with the world 2 steps away.
It's just taming that excessive high end beautifully. This is a really, really good plugin. Okay, next up, and last but no means least, I did put the Gullfoss on it. And you see what I did is I actually decided to only treat the high end. So if you can see, all of this below here has got nothing going on. It's only in here.
I landed here with...
And this was less about de-essing. I'd already done that. It was about controlling the high end so it was the same at all times. Because when it gets dense in the mix, I want the vocal to feel like it's really smooth and really sitting in there.
Stay with me, don't leave, I need you now. And when I do what's right, I know I'll make you proud.
Let's go to the second chorus where it gets a little bit more aggressive and have a listen.
That I can't follow. Stay and wait for me, stay and wait for me.
So I really do like what the Gullfoss is doing. Now, it works without it. Let's have a listen without it.
that I can't follow. Stay and wait for me, stay and wait for
I like it, but it feels like the words that have S's in it, they're not like ripping my head off, don't get me wrong. It's not like, but it feels like a little imbalanced. I don't want to get more aggressive on the de-essing, so this just tamed all of the mids, all of the high mids and all of the high end. And, you know, is a combination between with the recovery and the tame, which is set very light, and a little bit of brightening. Just brighten the whole vocal, but evened it out. Look at the way it's smartly sitting there, boosting and cutting. This whole area, check it out.
that I can't follow. Stay and wait for me, stay and wait for me. I will call when I'm coming. Stay and wait for me, I'll find you here.
I mean, it's a really, really good plugin for just evening out the vocal. I talk a lot about in the academy, we talk a lot about like taking instruments and making sure that they sit evenly, which means like if you make a click super clicky, fantastic. But if it's like tick, 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 and the rest of the track is like, it's going to sound awful. It's going to sound imbalanced. You can make songs which are bright as all heck. I mean, you can make super bright, aggressive sounding songs. But if it's just one or two instruments that come in and out that are overly bright, it's going to be offensive because you're going to turn it up and you're going to be like, you need this to be balanced. And that's what I think the Gullfoss is doing a really good job of here. It's not to say that another EQ and de-esser might not sort of do the same thing. I can mess around with 2 or 3 de-essers and pick out at different frequencies that are bothering me. That is not a problem. I could do that as well. But I really wanted to show what you could do with one plugin. And at the end, I put the PAZ Frequency Analyzer here, which is a good little tool for those of you that don't have one. And I just sort of checked out what it was doing. So I can just flatten this out. Let's have a look.
That I can't follow. Stay and wait for me, stay and wait for me. I will call when I'm coming. Stay and wait for me, I'll find you here if the stars allow it.
If I was going to say one thing, I would say at around about 10K, like it says 9,009. Because I'm not using the Gullfoss very aggressively. So what we could do is we could grab a de-esser here and we could make that 9900. Let's have a look.
That I can't follow. Stay and wait for me, stay and wait for me. I will call when I'm coming. Stay and wait for me, I'll find you here.
Time.
I'll find you here if the stars allow it. It's even worse when I'm close and deny it. I shouldn't ask when I know you want me now.
So that's kind of nice. I love, I love when I hear something and I'm trying to figure out what it is. Like, where is it? Was it 9 or 10K?
When I'm coming, stay and wait for me. I'll find you here if the stars allow it. It's even worse when I'm close and deny it.
You know, a trick when you're talking about super high frequencies that are annoying you, a good trick in Pro Tools at least is to do Shift Spacebar.
Stay and wait for me, stay and wait for me. I will call when I'm coming. Stay and wait for me, I'll find you here.
All right, all joking aside, why did I do that? I just played at half speed. This is a great, great trick. Because it's still reading at the 10K, okay? But you're hearing excessiveness at 5K. It's at half the speed. So those aggressive things, you're like, wait there. Now I know what to look for. And 5K is really sensitive for your ears. So I don't care if you're 5 or 50 or 150, you're going to hear that 5K ripping your head off. So a nice little trick. I learned that from a mastering engineer. The vocal thickening trick is here for you.
Stay and wait for me.
If you haven't watched the vocal thickening trick video, it is down around about here. Check that out. Eric will make sure there's a link to it. And then there's 2 delays going on here. This one is a fun one. This is the EC-300. This is McDSP's new delay. I just went straight to this delay here, this tape delay. But what I used, which was interesting, is I used the ducking feature it has here. There's a whole video talking about that. It's really kind of fun.
Stay and wait for me, stay and wait for me. I will call.
So what does that do? Well, those 2 delays, which is the EC-300 and EchoBoy, the way I have them set, with EchoBoy I used an R-comp afterwards. That's a Renaissance compressor, an R-comp. I used that afterwards to duck when the vocal's going, and then as soon as the vocal stops singing, it allows the delays to come through, which is all that basically what the McDSP is automatically doing for you. Have a listen in this break.
Ow. You want me now.
Look at this here, spy this area over here, and you'll see that the compressor is working really aggressively when he's singing, and then not when he's not singing, therefore allowing the delays to grow up.
Ow.
I could do it growing up. Here we go.
Ow. You want me now.
It's a pretty neat trick, and that is called sidechain compression. It's also called ducking. Basically what I'm doing is I'm taking it from the vocal itself here. See, it's got bus 50. Now look at the vocal over here and you'll see bus 50. So I'm busing from the vocal to a compressor, which is after the EchoBoy. I also put a de-esser on it because I didn't want this delay to be too bright and aggressive.
Ow.
You can see it's pretty dark. One of the worst things about modern delays, digital perfect delays, is they're like tick, 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 tick. I don't want to hear like an S and a T going sp, sp, sp. It will be so annoying in the headphones to hear dow, wow, tow, 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 tow. It will just take you out of the moment. So I'm making sure that those delays are more analog sounding, more tape sounding, more, softer sounding, if you like. Okay, and the last 2 things is the 2 reverbs that I'm going to give you here that I printed separately. You can use your own ones. They're both actually printed from hardware from a lexicon. They're bright and ambient. I have a little bit of high EQ up here on the filter bank, on McDSP filter banks, just to make them bright. But they're just there for ambience. They're super quiet in the mix. But those are the only reverbs I'm using. You can experiment and put your own reverbs in there as well. I laid off the reverbs on the vocals deliberately on this to go for something different, and I made it more about the delays.
Stay and wait for me, stay and wait for me.
Fantastic. Thank you ever so much. You can download these multitracks. Please download these multitracks. Mix along with me, post the mixes, just talk about the Workday release, mention Produce Like a Pro. The song, of course, is called Stay. Just let us know. Just put them everywhere you like. This is all about helping you grow. Every single month in the Academy, we do this. We have these multitracks available. We do mix critiques inside of the Academy. It's a really wonderful place. We get to share our ideas together, and people are really supportive of each other. It's a wonderful, wonderful place. So please go and download these multitracks. Also, check out the other 3 videos in the series before this. In fact, I think there's 4 because there's an Amplitube one as well. Check them all out. You'll see how we got to this place. This is a really good series to let you know how we not only recorded, but mixed this song. So thank you ever so much. Please subscribe, hit the notifications bell, go to producelikeapro.com, and don't forget to download these multitracks. Have a marvelous time recording and mixing. I'll see you all again very soon.